the ongoing peace negotiations brokered by the U.S. How do you think they're going, and what are your expectations of them?
I'm not in the loop in these negotiations, and allow me to focus on Jerusalem.
Sure, we can do that.
The positive trends happening in the city of Jerusalem are amazing. We're investing in all sectors. You see growth and satisfaction of the Arab sector, the Muslims and the Christians in Jerusalem. From the municipal services, we're investing in roads, in infrastructure. This week, we delivered a new school in Bet Hanina, 24 classrooms. Last week, we delivered a communal center in Tzur Bacher, newly renovated or built. And we're investing in road infrastructure. And the Arab sector in Yerushalayim are happier and happier. All polls show their satisfaction, and they understand exactly what's going on. The city of Jerusalem will always be a united city. It can never be divided. And my role as mayor is making sure that all constituencies get served better, developed better. The city of Jerusalem is, from year to year, is fulfilling more and more of its role, developing to its potential as a united city for all. That will not be negotiated. Any attempt to negotiate, God forbid, dividing the city of Jerusalem will fail.
But that is, in fact, one of the subjects, the main subjects of the peace talks, that Jerusalem will, in fact, be divided among two capitals, for the Palestinians and for the Jews. Do you accept that as a prospect?
No, it will not work. It will not happen. There's not, both, first of all, let's talk ideology a second. There's one city in the world, 3,000 years ago, the center of the world, the city of Jerusalem, the holy city, that had a temple in the center, and all tribes and all people from all faiths came to worship their faith in Yerushalayim. The city was not divided to tribes. At the time, by the way, 3,000 years ago, for 1,000 years, there were no Muslims, there were no Christians, there were Jews and non-Jews that all came to respect the city of Jerusalem, to worship God and the holy city of Yerushalayim. The fact that Jerusalem was the center of the world created a DNA second to no other city in the world. A city that everyone that comes to its gates feels comfortable and respect to the different tribes and other people that come to the city. That DNA of Yerushalayim has to stay. That's the future of the city, that's the power of the city, focusing on the common denominator, enabling freedom of religion. So today, unlike the last 2,000 years, since the city was reunited in '67, freedom of religion is respected. The Muslims manage the Muslim sites, the Christians manage the Christian sites, and the Jews manage the Jewish sites. Never was it like this in the last 2,000 years. So today, Jerusalem is indeed an open city, respects all religions, and this is the way it has to stay. No other city in the world, put aside Jerusalem, that was split ever worked. You cannot take a city, divide it. It will never function. Cities stay dysfunctional or get reunited again. So why go there in the first place? Especially when you're talking about a city that its DNA is so unique as a united city with respect to all faiths. So both ideologically and practically, the city cannot and will not be divided, and any attempt to do that will fail. It will not work. Don't go there in the first place.
But ostensibly, it is divided ideologically and politically. And the Temple Mount is a perfect example of this. I mean, how do you feel about Jewish prayer rites at the Temple Mount, which is obviously the most sacred place in all of Judaism, and the restricted measures being given to Jews to not pray, to not even move their lips to pray when they go up there or be detained?
First of all, it's not divided. The fact that you have all constituencies, religious, secular, ultra-Orthodox, Muslims, Christians, indeed is a feature, it's not a bug. It is a fact that we have to live together and create and manage the conflicts that are inherent by living together in such a city. So you have between ultra-Orthodox and secular, there's a status quo, and there's a status quo between Muslims and Christians and Jews. that has to be maintained. And managing the city of Jerusalem is managing conflicts. It's not eliminating them, because then the DNA will never work. It is managing the conflict. Managing conflict means that most of the times, not everyone gets their way in such a city, and the delicacy, the importance of managing this wisely, it's not written in any book. And indeed, if you talk about the Temple Mount, indeed, if you ask the Israeli law, I'm not happy with the status quo there. There's actually only one religious restriction in Jerusalem, that Jews are not allowed to pray in Temple Mount. Right. There's no other restriction anywhere else. There are no restrictions on Muslims and no restrictions on Christians. There's only one restriction that is imposed today by the police, which is Jews are not allowed to pray on the Temple Mount.
Well, really, the Muslim Walk is who is imposing these rules, yeah?
Well, the police is enforcing it.
But
now, this is a challenge that I think the national government, the Prime Minister, and the Israeli courts have to rule. I don't know what's going to be the answer, but I ask you, is there any other place in the world that people are not allowed to pray? In Jerusalem, there's no other place. And so this is something that has to be challenged. I'm not sure that the status quo there is perfect, but this is a question that the Prime Minister and the High Supreme Court will have to challenge and give an answer. My personal opinion is that indeed it's an awkward situation to be in, and nobody should be insulted by enabling others to pray. But again, as I said, this is an issue that is not on my table. It's an issue on the table of the Prime Minister and the High Supreme Court.
As you know, the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement has gained traction internationally, increasingly over the last year especially. How do you think Israel can best combat this phenomenon?
Boycott is a bad thing. When we educate our children, the Jewish children, the Christian, the Muslim children, we tell them that boycott is a bad thing. Don't go that route. You don't have to like somebody. But boycotting someone, eventually you get boycotted yourself. And it creates a lose-lose situation. I'll give you an example. If you boycott a business, well, maybe the owners will get hurt a little bit. Usually they'll overcome it. But the first to get hurt are the employees, and a lot of the businesses in Jerusalem are interwoven, Muslim, Christian, and Jews. The first to get hurt are the residents of Yerushalayim, are the residents of and the employees, and it creates a ripple effect, and everyone gets hurt. The employees and the people that use the business, eventually it'll hurt everyone. I'm surprised and amazed that the Western world is willing to accept standards that are unacceptable anywhere else in the world. Boycott is a bad thing. You will never allow it in your own country. You will never allow it. You really don't want it to happen to you. Don't do it to others. So practically, I think boycotts create lose-lose situation. It's not the one side loses, everyone loses. Rather, invest, improve, strengthen people that you want in this, but don't hurt people by feeling that eventually will get you your way. As a matter of fact, from the experience of the past, boycotts usually get the exact opposite effect.
Jerusalem, as you know, is one of the poorest cities in the nation. Why is that, and what steps are you taking to change that?
Jerusalem has huge potential. The brand Jerusalem is one of the strongest in the world. And when you compare Jerusalem to other major cities in the world, you realize that it's ours to lose. It's our ability, it's our potential that we have to exploit. And so as an entrepreneur, I set a goal to turn around the city from the economic side, and we're focusing on a number of core competitive advantages Jerusalem has. The number one, of course, is the fact that it's the holy city, central city, a destination for pilgrims and tourists from all over the world. I set a goal to move from 2 to 10 million tourists a year and scale the economy, create Jerusalem a very bullish, inviting city for business and investors. And indeed, in the first 5 years, we're now up to close to 4 million tourists a year. our economy is booming, and the municipality is scaling economically very, very fast. And that has huge halo effect on quality of life in Jerusalem. So it is about turning the city around and making it more successful, more exploiting its potential.
I understand. One of the big variables regarding this poverty is the Haredi segment, which is not working currently. Do you think the Haredim should serve in the IDF as well as join the workforce?
You'd be surprised at the number of Haredi Ultra-Orthodox residents that are seeking jobs, that are willing to join the army, not from the force of law, but from their own will. And my belief is that right now the challenge is not to convince them why to join the labor force. The challenge is how to create enough jobs to cope with the growing demand from the ultra-Orthodox sector to join the labor force. In Jerusalem, we made a fair, a municipal fair, for a job fair 2 years ago. We had 4,000 people join up. They all signed up and came and seek jobs. That's only in Jerusalem. That's a huge number. And right now, my goal, my challenge is create the jobs, get the industry rolling, and sometimes they need a bit of help to a little bit of complementary education or whatever is needed for the specific jobs. But the labor force in Jerusalem, the ultra-Orthodox sector, is joining the labor force in a fast pace. Unlike lots of politics that are done on a high level, on a national level, here in Jerusalem there's strong will, and we're working hand in hand with the ultra-Orthodox to get more and more of them into the job and labor force at their own will.
Yeah, in fact, you have started training centers, employment training centers, vocational studies centers to help engender that, yeah?
We're now investing, there's a pilot of 15, 16 million shekels a year to help thousands of ultra-Orthodox join the labor force. It's a joint venture with the national government. It is articulating the needs by the private sector, defining jobs that are relevant for the ultra-Orthodox sector, and then helping the different people that come to this pilot if they need extra training, if they need extra help or whatever, and make sure that they get hired. It's a process, a very healthy process. First of all, for the ultra-Orthodox people that are seeking jobs, and their families, and their neighborhood, and the city, and the national government. It is a win-win for all. It's got to be done in a way, and this is what we're mastering now, in a way that is complementing them. Yeah. The numbers are in thousands. The number in thousands. Our goal is to get thousands a year to the labor force.